From Sinatra, swing to Brando's stage. Maryland's grace to JFK's age. It's Johnny Russo, Hollywood's own, where Jeannie Raymond's secrets are shown. Hollywood Godfather.
Welcome, everybody. It's time for another Hollywood Godfather podcast. And let me introduce my co-host, Jeannie Raymond.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening. We're really excited about today's show.
Today's show is such a tribute to a great woman. I can't believe she's passed for 60 years. Mark Shaw and I, who's joining us in a few minutes, along with Robert, who's made this all happen for us. And they're dedicating, well, I'm going to tell you all that. Let them tell you. But Mark, how are you, my friend?
Well, good, and thank you for having me on the show again. I really appreciate it, Gianni. Thank you.
Would you please introduce Robert and his full credentials so our audience knows the dignitary we have tonight, please?
We sure do, and he's all dressed up there. He looks terrific. Bob Holden is somebody that I didn't know too much about until maybe, Bob can correct me, but maybe a year or so ago. He got in touch with me and told me that he had, I believe, as I recall, his wife had given him a book or two of mine, especially the bestseller, The Reporter Who Knew Too Much. And he went to Florida, had some time away from his busy schedule as a New York City councilman, and read one of the books, I believe, on the beach. And when he came back to New York City, as he explained to me in a telephone call, he really felt like that Dorothy Kilgallen had not gotten a fair shake when she died. And we talked a lot about that. And then he was very instrumental in our I put together quite an evidence report to be submitted to DA Bragg and the NYPD to try to see if we could get an investigation of her death, because there was no investigation when she died 60 years ago. And unfortunately, for a lot of reasons that we'd take a long time to talk about, that did not occur. But Bob said at the time I met him, and I was so impressed with his credentials as a New York City councilman, all of the things that he'd accomplished and all of that, I felt like it was a real honor to even know him. But he mentioned to me that he had the idea of going ahead and trying to, I guess you call it renaming or co-naming a street in honor of Dorothy. And Gianni, you know how long I've been involved with trying to get respect for Dorothy Kilgallen and get a tribute to her and all that. So it really warmed my heart when he told me that. But I didn't hear from him for a while. I know he was very busy and all that. And so I don't know, I guess it was maybe a month or so ago or whatever, he sent me an email that brought tears to my eyes, because he said he had set up a co-naming of the street. Dorothy lived at 45 East 68th Street, right near Madison Avenue there. And in his email,
She's one of my neighbors, because I'm on 61st Street. I knew that.
Good. So he told me that he was going to put together a ceremony to honor Dorothy with a co-naming of the street at that intersection as Dorothy Kilgallen Way. And that just blew me away, because I was so excited about the fact that finally she would get some tributes for this remarkable woman that you and I have discussed more in the past on your podcast. So Bob can kind of take it from there.
So the street co-namings have to be voted on by the New York City Council. We do a lot of them. We do it usually for somebody that's contributed to the greater good in their neighborhoods or on a particular street. Many times we do fallen heroes like firefighters or police officers who have, paid the ultimate sacrifice and so forth, or soldiers. But this was, I said, that's the least we can do. Her memory, many people don't know who she was. Many people don't know her background. I was fortunate enough to have lived in the 50s. So what's my line? I always thought she was the smartest. I think, I don't know what the numbers were, but she almost solved the what's my line puzzles on a regular basis, or she was right in there. Very, very smart, and you could tell she was smart. But I didn't know anything about her background as a columnist, as a reporter, and that's thanks to Mark, because like I said, like he said, uh, my wife bought me the book. I had heard a podcast, the tail end of a podcast from Frank Morano on radio WABC in New York,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
and
John Catsimatidis station.
right, and I was listening to it and caught the tail end of it. I just got his name, Mark Shaw. So I told my wife, "Boy, I got to get this book." I told her in the morning, and then she got it for me for either my birthday or Christmas, whatever it was. And I read it like Mark said. I read it in the week I was down in Florida on the beach during Christmas week, and I saw the name of a reporter that had worked with Mark, Sue Edelman from the New York Post in New York City. So I said, I know Sue. I have her phone number. I have her cell phone. So when I got back to New York, I waited a few days and I called her and she goes, "Oh yeah, I could put you in touch with Mark Shaw," and the rest is history. Um, I started, I spoke to Mark. Mark told me what he had done with Dorothy, all the investigations that he tried to do. And I said, well, maybe I could take a shot at this. So we did get Alvin Bragg's office. I was very pleased that they put two cold case attorneys on it. And they actually read Mark Shaw's book, The Reporter That Knew Too Much. And they spent the whole weekend reading it, and I was very impressed. I said, "Oh, we're going to get somewhere." And then I also went to the cold case unit of the NYPD, and they said they would do something. In the end, though, um, they said they came back and said, "Well, who do we prosecute? All the people are gone.
I know that's the problem.
All the players are gone. So if we're going to go through this investigation, we need to bring it to an end and charge somebody. But who do we charge?" And I said, "Well, more importantly," I said, she died, it was very mysterious, the circumstances. And Mark's book, several books lay it out very clearly. And so if you read them and you connect all the dots, this was great evidence, and you could see it's plausible. The time the mob was very, very big in New York City and actually in the country, and you could see that she was on to the JFK assassination. She interviewed Jack Ruby and
Well,
Mark. You could
it's so funny. All the people you're talking about at the time, I was around them because, like Mark, I was so interested because of the comparison of Marilyn Monroe's death and hers was the same.
right,
And which is funny, Mark Sinclair, her hairdresser who found her body, was very close to me because I was his shampoo boy when they worked at Lily Daché, because I was on the streets of New York and a truant officer found me at 15. And luckily for me, him and Kenneth, who worked at Lily Daché, picked me because I was a good looking kid and I was the shampoo boy there. So
wow,
I was hearing about this all the time.
right,
And then, my relationship with Marilyn for the last 5 years of her life, she died the same way. And most people don't know it, but we went really into the case, and she died of an aneurysm, and it was done in the same area in the groin through her fallopian organ, and they pumped oxygen in as they did Dorothy. And you're never going to trace it because it's oxygen.
Well,
right,
you and I have talked about this over the years. Of course, we differ a little bit in the cause of death for Dorothy,
Yeah.
but both of them were, and then I'll get back to Bob for a second. But one of the things that is similar between the two, Marilyn was going to go ahead and divulge some of the pillow talk secrets that she'd gotten from JFK and RFK. She said she was going to go to the media, and you can't say that, and the Kennedys couldn't let her get away with it. And
I
with
was
Dorothy,
there.
as you
That
know, she
happened
got
on.
close to showing that Carlos Marcello, the New Orleans Don, who had the greatest, strongest motive to have killed JFK, was behind the killing of JFK because he wanted Bobby Kennedy to be powerless. So there is definite connection there, and I prove that in the book called Collateral Damage. Bob, I think he would be interested in knowing what made you feel like that Dorothy didn't get the investigation that she should have when she died.
Well, because of all the things that you laid out in the book, that she had an extensive JFK file. Like you said, you mentioned that she interviewed Jack Ruby twice. Um, Melvin Belli was the attorney for Jack Ruby. I mean, you look at this whole thing. By the way, I witnessed live on TV, like millions of other people, the assassination or the shooting of Lee Harvey Oswald by Jack Ruby. That even looked like a mob rub out. I mean, that was like they were shutting him up. And at 12 years old, I was 12 years old when JFK was assassinated. That was so traumatic on most of us. I mean, because I went to Catholic school, the nuns, we were pro Kennedy because he was the first Catholic president, so he was our guy, and handsome. His wife was beautiful. It was Camelot all over again, and here we are, and he was taken out, and you could see it, but especially Lee Harvey Oswald being killed the way he was killed, that resembled, and then of course Jack Ruby with mob ties. Come
Well,
on.
Jack Ruby was sent there by Frank Costello. Jack Ruby worked for Costello in Texas, running all the slot machines and the women. And they convinced him, go there, we'll get you down there to kill Lee Harvey Oswald and you become a hero.
Yeah, but Mark covers, by the way, in his books, and Mark, you could jump in here. He covers the trial of Jack Ruby and how it was ridiculous.
Of course.
And Melvin Belli had his orders, apparently. I don't know. I mean, this is according to the books, but it's plausible. And Mark lays it out very nicely. I've read a few books now. I just got his latest, and I can't wait to read that. But this reeks, and very few people that lived and watched the Kennedy assassination and watched Jack Ruby shoot Lee Harvey Oswald. Very few people believe that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone assassin.
He wasn't. In fact,
yeah.
one of my closest friends, the mob there were 6 shooters there, plus Lyndon Baines Johnson, plus the Texas Rangers. There was no way JFK was leaving that mall that day. No way.
Well, the most interesting thing here, I think, and we can relate it to what's going to happen on November 8th, is that I had an advantage when I started looking into the JFK assassination because I found out about Dorothy Kilgallen. I knew nothing about her until I was completing a biography of Melvin Belli. And I started learning about all his mob connections and everything else like that. And I'll never forget the one thing where you guys are just like me. When you hear something that it just hits you in the head and you've got to do something about it. That happened when an associate of Belli said, well, when Melvin died, he told me they killed Dorothy. Now they'll go after Jack Ruby. And that led me to writing the book, The Poisoned Patriarch, about the '60 election and all of that. And then, because I knew nothing about Dorothy, I started looking into that. And of course, as Bob knows, and you do, Gianni, she was and is the most credible reporter to have ever investigated JFK's death, because she went to death. First of all, she and JFK were very, very good friends. In fact, she lived at 45 East 68th Street there, and JFK and Jackie used to come over there and for parties and play charades with her and everything else like that. So that's what's so amazing here about Bob being able to go ahead and get a street sign, Dorothy Kilgallen Way, because it's right next to where she lived. But she was I always say this about other so-called experts who looked into the assassination. Dorothy Kilgallen was in Dallas. A lot of them weren't. She was at the Jack Ruby trial. She interviewed him twice. She interviewed a lot of the witnesses to the assassination. And then she wrote these 8 or 9 columns. The first one, the Oswald file must not close. Whatever Ruby told her, she went to New Orleans. She looked into Carlos Marcello and all of that. So it's amazing because at 45 East 68th Street, she wrote all of her newspaper columns. Okay. She worked remotely from home when nobody did that very much. She worked on her preparation for What's My Line. She worked on her strategies for investigations. She was a mother of three and took care of the kids. So much of what she did, that's where she exposed the Jack Ruby testimony, secret testimony before the Warren Commission. So such a remarkable career, but it all goes back to the fact that to this day, and I want to say this too, with the new book, Abuse of Power, that book again is based on Dorothy Kilgallen's strategies and investigation prowess when even when RFK was still alive, because she always looked at one thing that I did when I was a criminal defense lawyer, and that is motive. And she realized that Marcello had the strongest motive to have eliminated JFK. And then when I looked into this new evidence about Robert Kennedy's death, Marcello did too, because he could never let Robert Kennedy become president. But that's what shines about Dorothy Kilgallen. And I hope that by Bob being able to give her this respect with a street sign like this, that more people will learn about this amazing woman and her illustrious career for sure.
I'm sure that'll happen. I'm going to crash your party on the 8th. If you don't.
Well, I hope you will.
I'm coming. No.
Okay, good. And
I
we should
met her-
say, Bob, shouldn't we? It's open to the public.
It's open to
You're
the
gonna be
public,
speaking.
and certainly, Mr. Russo, if you could say a few words about meeting Dorothy. I wanted somebody who actually met her, and you're the person.
Oh, I met and sat with her many, many nights.
Yeah, so you could offer some insight as to her personality. Give us some of your reactions as a teen to meeting her, and just talk about the times that she lived, and then Mark will talk about her accomplishments, because he's the expert on Dorothy Kilgallen, and certainly on investigative reporting. She was an amazing investigative reporter, and quite young. She was they called her the girl reporter when she was what, in the 1930s, Mark. She
Well,
started.
I have to think she was born in 1913, so she was a college dropout. She got an internship through her father, who was a famous reporter for the New York
Son.
Journal, which became the New York Journal American.
Right.
And at first, all of the gender discrimination, they didn't want anything to do with. They wouldn't give her exciting cases to look at or anything. But when you look at, she was enthralled, Gianni, maybe you know this, enthralled with crime cases.
Oh, I know.
And she witnessed a Sing Sing execution. And then she just listened to the trials that she covered. The Lindbergh baby kidnapping case, Dr. Sam Shepard, Lenny Bruce. I mean, she was at those trials and reported on them. And she was really the only reporter out of all those covering the JFK assassination to stand up to J. Edgar Hoover's Oswald alone theory and all of that. So Dorothy was a woman of courage, that's for sure. And I think it'll be great. What were your impressions of her, Gianni, when you first met her? Do you remember?
Well, I was in awe with her because, again, I was a teenager. I had the privilege of the Copa because Costello, who took me under his wing and became basically my father image.
Right.
I sat with all these people. I'd be sitting there because when he got up, he thought I should sit where he's sitting. And if they needed anything, I was hosting the table, and it was Earl Wilson and Dorothy Kilgallen, and it was an education for me. But I thought she was the smartest woman in the world. Everything she said, when she opened her mouth, you listened and you believed it. It was that's it. You never doubted her.
Fascinating. That's just great, Bob, isn't it? That'll really add a great deal to this ceremony, because I thought of him right away. I knew you won some people that would have known Dorothy, and this will really be great, won't it?
Yeah, normally, yes. Normally we have family, but we've been trying to contact some family members who are still alive, obviously. And hopefully we'll have a family member there or a relative. We're hoping. We still haven't set the the speaking order. But right now, it's I'll open up, and then Mark is going to say talk about his investigations and talk about her life, and then Jeannie, you could talk about meeting her and your impressions, and hopefully we can find a family member, because that's what happens. And then we actually have we unveil the sign, and then we give a copy of the sign, the exact sign that's hanging. We have another copy that the Department of Transportation in New York City gives us, and we give it usually to a family member. But absent that, we could right now we'll decide who gets it. But right now, Mark Shaw is probably the likely
No,
candidate.
Bob, you should have that sign. There's no
No, that should
question
be
about it.
no. I can get that easily. I can get another copy. So don't worry about that. You should, you did amazing, the books that you wrote about this, and then obviously others, really, we need justice for Dorothy. And that's what I hope, so, one day we'll get it, just like justice for JFK, because it was never solved. In my feeling is it was never solved, but hopefully one day it will be. But she was onto something, and she, according to Mark, she was her life was threatened, and just right before her death. So that alone should have warranted an investigation, but it didn't,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I think what happened with Bragg and with NYPD and the other investigations I've tried to get is, yes, you're right. There, Ron Pataki, who was the kind of a romantic interest of Dorothy's, before she died, she unfortunately shared a lot of her information from the JFK assassination investigation with him. And then I believe he was turned by Marcello's people to set her up for the kill and everything like that. So yes, he's dead. I almost got him to confess one time when I talked to him. It didn't work out.
Wow.
But the key here is that her reputation was ruined. And in the new book, Abuse of Power, I interviewed 4 people who were right around the medical examiner's office when Dorothy died, including a deputy sheriff, 2 forensic people, and the wife of one of the forensic people, and that's in the new book. And their recollections of what happened. I remember one of them who Christopher Broach, who's one of them, who lives right there in New York City, is a friend of Sue Edelman's. But one of them said, it wasn't, when I walked into the medical examiner's office, it wasn't like Joe Bonanno was there, but all of the people that they brought into work ended up being from the same city in Sicily. And, they quickly,
that happens.
that's right. They quickly decided, a coroner quickly decided that they found an empty pill box of Seconal pills, sleeping pills, and immediately thought it's another celebrity who's overdosed. They never had an investigation. I interviewed Dr. Michael Baden for this new book, and he basically said, no, we didn't know what happened. They never should have told the media that she died of an overdose, because what that happened is it really ruined Dorothy's reputation. And I can tell you this, and I guess I should get credit for it, and I'll take it, is that when I started looking into Dorothy Kilgallen, I couldn't find anything about her. She basically disappeared from the face of the earth. Nobody stood up for her, not her family, not the What's My Line people, not the people at the newspaper. Nobody stood up for her and said, that's not like what Dorothy would have done. And so, unfortunately, that reputation has been tarnished. I'm pleased to say now that because of the interviews and presentations I've done, that they're up on YouTube and all of that, that people have come around to realizing, and I get an email probably every day. I'll tell you, Judy Collins, for instance, the singer-songwriter of fame, sent me an email that said how much she loved Dorothy and how upset she was about what happened with Dorothy, and she would try to do anything she could. She was going to come to this ceremony, but she's traveling out in California. So, Bob, I hope we can get some new investigation or a investigation based on the new evidence that I have. But if we can clear her name at some particular point, that would make a lot of difference. And you have really took a giant step doing that by the legitimacy of co-naming this street after her. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And it's almost,
Let's take a break.
Can we,
1 second.
yes, sorry. I do
Um,
want to take a quick break and then we'll come right back, and give me just 1 second and we'll just
It's a
take a quick,
fast commercial.
yes.
I see.
Well, I'm very happy to say, having Mark Shaw on this show today, where my book comes up, my new book is Mafia Secrets, which is what we're talking about right now, comes out November 18th. And Amazon has already sold 22,000 copies in pre-orders. This is my fourth book. I'm trying to become a Mark Shaw. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up, and that I'll be at the Lark for my people in Europe. I'm ending my tour this year on January 2nd at the Lark in Dublin. So
Oh,
get
boy.
your tickets. We're almost sold out already. And they're asking me to stay another show, which I'll definitely do. But let's get back to this wonderful tribute
Yeah.
to
Well, you have sold
Dorothy.
22,001 because I bought the book, and it looks like it's very impressive.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, for you to say my book is impressive, that's like, that's
Well,
the greatest tribute. Thank you to me.
All
I
right.
appreciate
Can
it.
I start us, Gianni?
Sure.
All right. Okay. We're back with Mark Shaw, who is an author that has wrote a bunch of amazing books, and with Robert Holden, who is a New York City councilman. And we appreciate you joining the show. So let's get back into the conversation.
All right.
So I've got
yes,
some questions, if that's okay.
sure.
Sure.
So, Mark, I know all about your books, and I am 59 years old. So this is when I was very small, and I've learned all about all of this from you. And the name Dorothy Kilgallen, I know some people of my age have never heard of her, but I certainly have, after listening to all that you've told about it. And I think it's remarkable, Robert, Bob, that you are bringing this back up and trying to restore her reputation. I think it's fantastic in what you're doing. So I know on November 8th, you've got something coming up. Will you tell us exactly what that is that we know you're naming a street after her, but so people can come. You said the public is welcome. So I'm wondering if they'll tell us exactly where it is, and do you know the
Right.
times?
It's on 68th Street between Park and Madison. It's going to be 11 o'clock on November 8th. That's a Saturday, and it's the 60th anniversary to the day that obviously Dorothy Kilgallen was discovered dead in her bed. And we never had full closure, like Mark was mentioning earlier in his books. She just disappeared. And Mark, I believe there was also a blackout the next day in New York City. So they had a massive blackout, as I remember it. That also contributed to the lack of news coverage. And it didn't, it really was knocked off the front pages. And as Mark said earlier, she never got her just due. She never, her name wasn't cleared. It looked like she overdosed, which she didn't. We knew, we could almost state that for a fact. She wouldn't have done that. And even what Mark has reported over and over again, that the, the second oil that were in it was in her blood, and also the alcohol was very little, both of them. It wasn't enough that would kill her, and it wasn't really an autopsy, and it wasn't really an investigation. That should have happened. We're hoping it still could happen, but I'm hoping that by doing the street code naming, it will bring her name to the forefront, and people will start to ask questions, and
Good.
people might come forward.
Good. And Dorothy Kilgallen, I want to give a couple quotes here that I don't want to forget. But 10,000 people showed up for her funeral. That's an immense, a lot of people. John Lindsay, I think, was the mayor there. He was there. All of these different people, out of respect for Dorothy Kilgallen, because if you ever want to summarize what Dorothy was about, she was a woman of the truth. She got into a dogfight with Frank Sinatra by writing columns and talking
Well,
about his
he used to
mafia
badmouth her all the
connections.
time.
Mafia connections. She went up against J. Edgar Hoover. She was a woman of the truth who always tried to find out exactly what happened. We should mention the New York Post called her the most powerful female voice in America. Can you imagine that? Her newspaper column was sent to 200 newspapers across the country. Ernest Hemingway called her the greatest woman writer in the world. And she was just somebody who, and people have asked me, didn't she know that she was getting too close to the truth about the assassination? She was writing a book for Random House
She
about it.
wanted to get close. You and I know
And
that.
no, that's right. And she did. But wasn't she scared? Shouldn't she have taken precautions, gotten bodyguards and everything else like that? But Dorothy was so big. She was so popular with her column and everything else. I think she thought that she was immune from anybody coming after her, and unfortunately made that mistake. So I really had the advantage because I found out about her, and even today, I still follow the investigation strategies that she used back then, and that's why this what Bob has done to bring her back into the limelight, I think will make a difference with an awful lot of people, many of whom really don't know who she is yet.
Well, what I did know. Oh, I'm sorry, Gianni, go ahead.
No, please, no, go.
No, what I know about her is she was someone, not only was she a woman in this business, but she wasn't afraid to butt heads with people, right? And she knew that, what'd she say, if people knew what I knew, then I should be afraid, or something to that effect.
You've got a good memory. Right before she died, whatever Ruby told her sent her to New Orleans, and that's where Marcello was. And she believed that Marcello was the one who set up JFK for the assassination. So she gets back to New York and she says to one hairdresser, if the wrong people knew what I know about the JFK assassination, it would cost me my life. You have a good memory there. And the other hairdresser, she said, I'm afraid for my life and my family, and I bought a gun.
Oh, wow.
And so she knew she was susceptible to problems.
Wow.
The love of her life was her young son, Kerry, who was a real young little kid. And just before she died, I think she was warned because she picked up a New York City newspaper, and there was a picture of young Kerry running across the lawn at Central Park. And she just went wild because she knew that somebody had been following him. And young Kerry is the one she took to the White House, and JFK made a big fuss over him and gave him a PT 109 pin and all that. But when she saw that picture, I was kidding. I've had some contact with Dorothy's granddaughter, and unfortunately, I don't know if she can make it to the ceremony, but she recalled, as I did, that Dorothy, that was right near Halloween. So to protect young Kerry, she ordered a limousine, and he trick-or-treated going around in a limousine with her in the back seat. That's how much she loved him. She's a wonderful mother. She really was. But she knew she was in trouble. And unfortunately, she didn't take care of that by being careful as to where she was going to give people information about the assassination and all of that. And unfortunately, that's what led to her demise. Bob probably knows that there ended up being 3 barbiturates in her system when a new autopsy or new look into her system was done just a couple years later. But, you talk about Marilyn, you talk about JFK, you talk about Dorothy, and now I'm going to prove in the new book that Marcello was involved in Robert Kennedy's death. So you've got these mob hits, as Bob, talked about, because they all make sense. What happens, and Gianni is the #1 expert about this, so he should take over, because what do? You get rid of whoever. First of all, you get somebody to do your dirty work, right? And Carlos Marcello, by the way, confessed to killing JFK, as I have in the new book. He said while he was in prison, I had him killed. I'm glad I did. I wish I'd done it myself. That's in the JFK assassination records that were released earlier in this year. So, it's a situation where Gianni knows, you get somebody to do your dirty work, And then you go ahead, you've got to, can't have loose voices there. So you go ahead and get rid of that person, and then you're scot-free. And that's exactly what's happened through the ages with regard to those four deaths.
Well, I happened to be at Marcellos's house on a Sunday and he used to have a big family gathering all the time. And I was down in New Orleans that time, and I went to it, and who showed up was Robert Kennedy with a group of people on a Sunday and embarrassed him in front of his family. And he said, with the newspapers there, because Robert was, he knew where he was going, trying to elevate himself to become the next president.
Right.
And Marcello said, "You're a dead man." And he stopped everything, went right over to him with the press. You're threatening a district attorney general? He said, "I'm not threatening you. You're a dead man."
Wow.
And that's when they deported him. Remember, they deported him and dropped him in the jungle.
Right. Yeah.
And
Mark mentions that. Yeah.
yeah, and he
Can't
came
mess
back
around with those guys.
in a week. He was back here, and all of us knew, what happened in California was going to happen.
I always like to I'm going to tell a quick story, because when I was with Good Morning America, as a correspondent, they sent me to Philadelphia, and you may know this name, to interview Angelo Bruno,
Hello.
who was the head of Philadelphia's mob
the head of
people.
the
Well,
mob
he couldn't
people,
talk to me, but his attorney could.
Yeah.
So I interviewed the attorney, and I couldn't believe what he told me. So I went back to GMA, and they played that interview the next day. And the producer said, "Mark, can you get that attorney to talk to you again?" True story. And I said, "Well, I'm still in Philadelphia. I'll try." I called his office. Is Mr. Such and Such there? Secretary came on the line, and I could tell there was something wrong.
Of
And I
course.
finally said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Well, I guess you don't know, Mr. Shaw. My boss, when he started his car this morning, it blew up." You can't mess around with those guys, that's for sure.
No.
And that's what can happen, and you know that better than I do,
Unfortunately.
unfortunately.
Well,
Bob, can I go back to Bob for, no, go ahead with your question, Jeannie,
no,
please.
I was just going to ask Bob. So when did they start reinvestigating this?
When I spoke to Mark, and I read another book of his, and I got more information. And so I called, I do have access to some of the city officials. So I did meet with the police. I met with the cold case unit. They said they would investigate it. Then I went to Alvin Bragg's office, and they at first, I emailed them and went back and forth, spoke to them, gave them, and Mark provided me with a lot of his notes, which were compelling to say the least. And they assigned two cold case unit, Bragg's office assigned two cold case unit lawyers. And like I mentioned before, that they actually read the book that we had recommended. Mark said, "This is the book that they should read." And it wasn't a small book, it was pretty thick. Was that Collateral Damage? I think that was.
Yes, it
Yeah.
was. Yes, it
Yeah.
was. Thank you.
So,
Good memory.
and that was involved, and I was so impressed. I said, "Oh, we're going to get someplace," because they actually took the time to read his book. But then we got to the point where I would call back, and they weren't as forthcoming. They said, "Oh, this is going to take some time," and months went by, and I finally had a Zoom call with them. That they said, "Well, Councilman, who do we prosecute?" Because normally we have an end goal here to try to find information. We have to charge somebody. Who would we charge? Who would we indict? We have to bring this to a grand jury. Who should the grand jury indict? And
But when
I
you
couldn't
think
answer
about
that, but
when you think about it, who do you? And they're spinning their wheels, and they're never going to get
well,
it.
Mark had contacted Bragg's office before, right, Mark? And at that time, I think Ron Pataki was still alive.
He was, and the first one I contacted was Cyrus Vance Jr.'s office.
Okay, all right.
And they assigned a detective to it. I talked with him. I sent him I flew to New York, the police headquarters. I did all of that. And then all at once, they said it's going to take too much time. So I traveled to New York. I met with Dermot Shea, the police commissioner. where he was giving a speech, kind of startled him by being there, walked up in front when he was done, and he shook my hand and said, "We will investigate Dorothy's death." I know that they say these things about who can you prosecute and all of that, but I'm very suspicious. I've never been able to get the records of the New York Police Department about Dorothy's death because I'm not a member of the family. And I'm still suspicious that there's something in those records or whatever that is protecting somebody or whatever. Now, I know this has happened a long time ago, but unfortunately, it just doesn't seem to make sense to me that the evidence is compelling that she was poisoned, that she was murdered, she was a victim of a homicide. That's what a cold case squad does, and that's what Dermot Shea told me they were going to do. So I've always been kind of suspicious that there's something else involved here that we don't know about.
And that's plausible, Mark, because it was going so well. We were like
Right.
gaining some traction. It was very hopeful. My conversations with the attorneys at Bragg's office, the DA, Manhattan DA, were very promising. And all of a sudden, we hit a brick wall. And that, when Mark said that, he ran into the same thing. There could be something in the files that they don't want to touch. That they just say, you know what, we don't want to open this can of worms, or
Right. So one of you mentioned, was it a granddaughter of Dorothy's or a niece? Couldn't
Yeah,
that
it was me. It was me. And here's a situation with the family. Unfortunately, when Dorothy Kilgallen died, and I need to put that in context, nobody stood up for her. All right. Here's why. At least that's what they said. They knew she was working on the JFK assassination. In fact, her butler, the night before she died, told her, "You've got to leave this alone. Stop investigating." But Dorothy wasn't going to do that. And so then she dies. All right. Well, they're convinced, everybody around there, including the people at What's My Lawn, John Daly and all of them, that it's somebody, the same people who assassinated the president of the United States. So they don't want to go forward with any investigation. They're scared to do that.
That makes
So
sense.
when I contacted, she has a son, and she has two sons and a daughter.
Right.
I've gotten in touch with them over the years. They don't want anything to do with this. They still feel like that there's somebody out there who's going to cause them problems or whatever. But a month or so ago, maybe 2 months, I was contacted by this granddaughter of Dorothy's, and she was most interested in finding out more about Dorothy. I sent her a copy of the Reporter Who Knew Too Much. She's been looking at it. Unfortunately, I thought, okay, and we talked about that she could come back to New York City. I told her I'd pay her expenses if she would do that. And I thought we had a good shot at that until apparently she talked to her father, who still apparently, even after all these years, is afraid that somebody will come out of the woodwork and cause her problems. Now, I've asked her just to think about this some. Bob may have more luck by it coming from them, because I think this happens to every author. I'm sure it's happened to Gianni as well. A lot of people feel like you write these books because you want to sell them and make a lot of money. And I think the family over the years has felt like that's been my only motive, when of course it hasn't been. But they're always suspicious of that. So I think if Bob is saying that they're going to try to get a hold of some of the family members coming from him, it may make a difference. I hope it does.
But Mark, the thing is this: anybody that's involved, whether they're just a son, a niece, whoever it may be, there is a fear there. I mean, it's known.
Yeah.
You get too close to something, you're going to have a problem. And they say, what good is it going to do now? We're going to clear her name, and I'm going to die. So, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and if they can kill the president of the United States,
hello,
then
Bob,
and get away with it, and get away with it.
Let's leave this on a positive note.
Right.
Bob, what you have done, we'll be there on the 8th. Mark, you've influenced so many of us, even myself, because I met her in a different light than I knew of her death. For me, it was so comparison to Marilyn's death, and that's what gave me the interest. I knew Mark Sinclair. I spoke to Mark Sinclair after that, which I never discussed with anybody until now. But when you see what's written on the wall, you walk away, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yes. That's true. That's
But
true.
on the 8th, Robert will be there. Thank you so much
Great.
for doing
Thank
this.
you. Thanks for the podcast, and
No, and
thanks
we're
for
gonna
all you
get
do.
you
And I can't wait to meet you in person on the 8th.
We'll be there and
All right.
congratulate you and Mark on your effort. I'll be there anytime you want and come on anytime
Thank you.
because it's something that should be solved. Will it ever be solved? Who knows?
Well, Mark and I are going to go on. Maybe you can go on to some TV shows and talk about Dorothy. So maybe we could talk about this to get some publicity
incorporate me
for this.
anytime you want.
Great.
I,
Thank you
I
so much.
believe in her and both of you guys, your effort. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob and
Right, Jeannie.
Gianni. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good
Jeannie.
night, our audience. God bless you all, and we'll talk to you next week.
Hollywood Godfather, swinging bold, unveiling legends both new and old. Gianni and Jeanie shine that light, bringing golden ages back tonight. From Sinatra's riff to Brando's stage command, from Maryland's secret lessons, all firsthand, versus mob time.